So I saw Justice League last night. There have already been a lot of videos talking about the problems with Justice League, and this will probably be another one. I did not dislike it as much as I thought I would. I, DC do not have a great track record so far. Wonder Woman was pretty good, but the others are awful. Let's be frank, they're very boring above everything else. Justice League is slightly less boring. Not to say that it's entirely unboring. There's still quite a lot of boring parts to it. I'm kind of tempted to say that the reason it's not as boring as Joss Whedon, because I realize there are a lot of accusations against Joss Whedon at the moment. I really like Joss Whedon's writing. Like I can't deny that. I really do enjoy the stuff he writes. You can see there are a lot of Joss Whedonisms in Justice League, and some of them I really did laugh at. Some of them I found kind of irritating. The Flash, as has been noted everywhere, makes a lot of jokes, and some of them land, and you're like, "Ha!" And some of them you're like, "What? Just stop talking, please. You're annoying. Stop talking." The Flash is not the worst character, though. Not the worst character for Stop Talking. The worst character for Stop Talking is Aquaman, or possibly Steppenwolf. Probably Aquaman has more lines, so probably Aquaman is the worst for just stop. There is... See, I think if anyone could have saved Aquaman, it's Joss Whedon, and because this Aquaman sucks so hard, maybe no one can save him. He is a braggadocio. He is very brash. He's very confident, and he's very cruel to everyone else. And that's about it. And there's nothing else going on. And the things he says aren't funny. And I mean, he brags, and I guess I don't really see why, because he's not the most powerful member of the group. He's not. I mean, he's the only member of the group who doesn't really contribute anything unique. I'm not saying because he joins in the fight scene, sure, but to be honest, you could cut him out of the fight scenes, and the fight scenes would go. I mean, if this were like a real battle, you'd be like, oh well, every member counts, but it's not. The battle is devised so that the Justice League can win. That's the point. And Aquaman doesn't contribute anything to the fight that other members couldn't have done. There's one bit which is there. So I had heard the plot before I saw the film because it came out later here than it comes out everywhere else. Oh well. And I had heard there's this bit when they're in a room that is going to fill with water and they're all going to drown, and then Aquaman saves them. And I thought, okay, that sounds like a legitimate way for Aquaman to serve the purpose, and it's water themed, which is his thing. And actually, it could be quite a nice moment, like they're all trapped in this room, and I think because you have Wonder Woman, who I think is a god. That was sort of left unclear in the Wonder Woman film. Maybe she's a god. She has God in her. She's very powerful. But we don't know. Maybe she can drown. I think there was a tiny bit where she was underwater in Wonder Woman, but I don't think it was ever implied that she just, couldn't drown. I mean, she survives a lot of the gas, so maybe she can breathe, hold her breath longer than other people. I don't know. But, so, yeah, I mean, maybe Wonder Woman can drown. Batman can definitely drown, because Batman's just a dude. The Flash, I imagine if he got underwater, could drown. And Cyborg, being made of lots of electrical parts and metal, would presumably be very afraid of coming into contact with lots of water. So actually, that would be one thing which could actually put the entire league in peril, is a lot of water coming in. And I thought, that'd be quite nice. They're in a quite confined space, the water's rushing in, and they're all like, oh shit, they're all confronting their own mortality, and probably like the Flash is freaking out and having a panic attack, and they have to try and calm him down. And then Aquaman comes in and saves them, and is like, "I'm part of the team now," and that would be a good thing for him to do. But the way it's shot, the way it's kind of this scene is done, so yeah, you see like this wall, something breaks, and then there's all this water coming. But like as soon as the water's coming in, they're already getting towards the thing in which they get away. They're already making their way towards the thing, and then sort of Aquaman comes out of the spray and does a thing and sort of briefly halts the water, but it's very brief. And I don't know. To me, it didn't seem like the Justice League were in that much peril. Like it seemed like they were just going to get to the thing where they escape, which they escape in anyway. So he didn't really do anything related to water there. Like, I mean, he stops the water briefly, but then, like, well, the way he stops the water, I don't see why, Diana couldn't stop the water, or, hot, like, with her, like, throw something at it, like, create a dam, or it just seemed very unnecessary. Like Aquaman just doesn't contribute anything to do with water. He's not aquatic. He's just a strong dude who carries a trident. And yet again, there is a subverted. This really annoyed me, because I think this is yet again a moment that's in the film that just should have gone differently. Where so they're trying to find out where Steppenwolf is, and they're like, "Oh, how can we find him?" And then Bruce Wayne is like, "Why don't you put out a thing among the fish?" And Aquaman's like, "I don't talk to fish, I talk to water." But actually, it's, and yeah, that's an okay scene, whatever. But and then eventually they just find him because Cyborg just figures out where he is, because it's time to fight him. So then, of course he finds out where he is. Cyborg is really useful. Cyborg contributes so much. Cyborg is like really, really on top of things in this film. So because Cyborg has already done so much, so why didn't they give this one to Aquaman? Because like, why aren't they like, "Oh man, there's no way we can find the villain," and then Aquaman's like really sheepishly like, "Oh, there is something I can do, but it's kind of ridiculous," and they're like, "What's that?" And then he asks the fish, and the fish finds Steppenwolf. And the thing is, that would be funny, and it would also let Aquaman contribute to the plot, and also, I think it would let Aquaman show some kind of vulnerability. It would let him sort of show some awareness of his own flaws, which I think is somewhat necessary, because him being so brash and arrogant and douchey, it's just really, it just pisses you off. Like he just seems to be there just to be like, "I'm better than everyone else," and you're like, "Well, no, you're not really. You don't do anything." But if he'd been like, "Oh man, I have this ridiculous power that I can talk to fish," and everyone's like, "Ah, ha, ha, ha," but then it solves the plot, that would actually be a great moment. And the thing is, they obviously had the they had the right answer, and then they just were like, "No, let's not do that because it's not cool, I guess." No. So yeah, I think they really should have just left Aquaman out of it, to be honest. Also, Aquaman's motivation didn't make sense to me, because I mean, maybe I'd misunderstood a bit, but like, so he goes to Atlantis, where there's one of the plot boxes, and the plot box gets stolen. But when he's there, everyone's like, "Oh, look who's come crawling back! It's the prodigal son." And it kind of sounds to me like he'd never been there before. Like they were like, "Oh, at last, the firstborn son of someone." And he's like, "Yeah, well, I never knew my parents, so I don't give a crap about you people." So it sounds like he's never been there. But then it seems like his motivation for him to join the Justice League is he's like, "They took one of the plot boxes." Why does he care that they took the plot box? He doesn't know any of the people in Atlantis. He's maybe never been there before. If he has been there before, it certainly was a long time ago. Like, if my neighbors from like 8 years ago got robbed, I wouldn't be like, "Yeah, time to avenge that crime." I'd be like, "No, that sucks for them. Oh well." And like, he doesn't seem to know what the plot boxes can do until he joins the League. Or I mean, well, no, actually, that's wrong because Batman's like it's going to destroy the world, but then he says he doesn't care about the world being destroyed. So why does he suddenly change his mind? Because some people he doesn't know get robbed. It's confusing. It doesn't make sense. Um, oh well. Um, Steppenwolf, the villain. The one thing I will say in defense of Steppenwolf is he has a very memorable name. Oftentimes with characters like that, you're like, what's his face, the villain? But with Steppenwolf, I don't know if it's just they say it a lot, or I mean, it's quite a memorable name. I don't know why he's named after a coyote. Coyote, wait, why? Maybe they're like the top dogs on his planet. I don't know. Um, I haven't read that much um, involving Apocalypse and Darkseid, etc. But yeah, so Steppenwolf, a very memorable name. So I do remember what he's called, and oftentimes you don't with characters like this. And by characters like this, I mean completely boring, flavorless, just shitty antagonists, just people who are there because you need to have a villain. But I would argue, yet again, that there's been a misstep because you don't need Steppenwolf, memorably named as he is. I think the film would be scarier because nothing. Steppenwolf doesn't really accomplish anything. He doesn't do anything that his troops couldn't just do. So he has all these hordes of mindless bug troops, um, parademons, and I mean, they also don't do anything. But the stuff that Steppenwolf does, which is mainly picking up plot boxes and being like, "Ooh, plot box," and then I guess eventually he puts them near each other, but we don't see him do that. I think the parademons could grab the plot boxes on their own, and I think it would just be scarier because I genuinely think it would be a better film if there was this mystery of who are the parademons, like who are they working for, and obviously comics fans would know the answer, but most people are not comics fans, so I think um, most people would be like, oh, that's interesting. So if it's sort of because obviously Steppenwolf is setting up a larger story arc for these films involving presumably Darkseid and Apocalypse and the New Gods. He mentions the New Gods at some point, but I genuinely like it would just be scary. Like I think you would get more setup. You would get more of a feel of a build up if just the troops were just in this one. You never saw their commander. You never saw the people in charge. You only saw the ground troops, and there are just swarms of them. And maybe like so the in the film the Steppenwolf has tried to invade Earth before. So and it's Diana who's in the Justice League who knows the story. But what if Diana didn't know the story? What if Diana knew that the demons had attacked before, but they didn't know what they wanted, what they were aiming for? And I just think that would be so much scarier. It would be so much more kind of compelling because you really wouldn't have the answers. And I mean, I understand the sort of the wisdom of it's really not interesting to watch people hack through nameless troops, and it's not. It's like like really big battle scenes are often quite dull. Not always, but often. And I mean, the fight scenes in Justice League are fairly dull anyway, so I don't really think it would make it like at no point when anyone was fighting Steppenwolf did I feel they were in any more danger than when they were fighting the stupid bug things. Um, he just doesn't have any presence. I just did not care about anything he did. Um, so I think if they just had the parademons working, well, not working on their own, so you would get the sense there was something bigger behind them. I think that would be much more effective. It would sort of really establish the stakes, and you would just feel that you didn't have the answers, and it would just. I think it would be scary the idea of these troops coming out of nowhere, these mindless drones, and just destroying things. Um, but yeah, well, Steppenwolf is in the film. I didn't really understand Steppenwolf. I didn't understand why Steppenwolf suddenly stopped fighting at the end because so he has a showdown with the Justice League early on in the film, and he just leaves. Like they kind of beat him, they kind of don't, and he leaves. And then it's showdown with him again. This time Superman's there, and it's not really like, I don't see why it's different this time. I mean, I guess Superman's there, but then he doesn't. Why does he? Why does he care about Superman? And then it's the big thing is like his axe gets destroyed, and then he's like, no, no, and all his little parademons attack him because he's suddenly afraid because he lost his axe. But he never seemed that attached to the axe. Like, he carries it wherever he goes, but Batman has his cape with him wherever he goes. I don't think if Batman's cape got ripped off, he'd be like, no, not my cape. So I don't really see, like, he never seemed particularly attached to his axe. He never seemed fond of his axe. At one point he says to Diana, it's soaked in the blood of your sisters, but that seems more like a boast about his strength than rather than like the axe is important to him. Like, is the axe like the One Ring, or like, is the axe somehow powerful in and of itself? Does it give him a boost? Like, why does losing it cause him to like piss off? Like, why? That really sort of confused me. Good points about Justice League. I did laugh several times. There's a very good joke in the opening when kids are talking to Superman. They're like, have you ever fought a hippo? And that is a funny line. So well done to whoever wrote that. I laughed several times at The Flash. I sometimes just wanted The Flash to shut up. I really like Gal Gadot. Who doesn't like Gal Gadot? She's great. She is the only one really charismatic enough to pull off her character. I mean, I guess Jeremy Irons as well, but Jeremy Irons isn't in it as much. Like, Gal Gadot is truly like compelling. You watch her and you're like, oh yeah, no, I actually want to know what she's about. I want to know what her deal is. She gives a pep talk to one of the other members of the League, and you think, yeah, actually, no, I would probably, if she was talking to me, I would actually like listen to what she was saying. She is actually genuinely charismatic. The others, with the possible exception of Jason Momoa, are like okay actors, but they're not particularly charismatic. They're not particularly compelling or charming or really watchable. And when by charismatic, I don't mean that someone's attractive. That's not, like, there are lots of unattractive people who are charismatic. There are lots of attractive people who are uncharismatic. Gal Gadot is attractive. I don't think I'm shocking anyone saying that, but she is more than that. She's very watchable. She's very winsome, shall we say. Like, you get the feeling you would actually want to talk to her in real life. So that, yeah, she is the only one who really is compelling, charismatic enough to pull off her character. Ben Affleck is not. Ezra Miller, sort of 50-50. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Everyone else, nope. Kieran Hines, definitely not. And I mean, it's unfair really to compare this film to the Avengers, but this film, it's an Avengers ripoff, so it's inevitable really. Not that the Avengers is strikingly original, but this film was made because Avengers got made, and this film is the way it is because Avengers was the way it is. So that's it's inevitable. Loki, because Tom Hiddleston has charisma to spare. Tom Hiddleston could hand you an entire trunker chest full of charisma, and he'd be like, take it, I've got tons more at home. He just sleeps on mountains of charisma like Smaug. So yeah, no, Tom Hiddleston as Loki was very compelling, very charismatic, and really, he gave a face to the army. So I think in the Avengers, giving a face to the army works much better because the face is much more compelling, much more interesting, and just less generic. So, and also, I mean, in that case, it had a personal tie-in for the Avengers because he's Thor's brother. Thor tries to correct Loki's behavior. Thor tries to get Loki, to stop what he's doing, and who the fuck cares about Steppenwolf? Steppenwolf, none of these people have ever met him. There was one interesting bit where he says to Diana's mother, he's like, you will love me. And that almost hinted at, like, oh, maybe there is some kind of more understandable, relatable motivation behind his actions. Maybe he actually fell in love with Queen Hippolyta. That would have been an interesting. And that would have given him a reason to fight the League, because Diana's in the League, and it's like a Snape thing that he sees Diana as the product of the woman he loved loving someone else, and he's like, that. But no, that's not what happens. He just wants to conquer stuff. And okay, like there are people who just want to conquer stuff in real life. I'm not saying it's not not a believable motivation. It's just not a compelling one. Like the people who just want to conquer stuff in real life aren't particularly interesting. You wouldn't be like, oh man, I really want to sit down with, Genghis Khan or Attila the Hun. I really just want to get under their skin. You'd be like, you'd run away. But you wouldn't, spend an evening with them. But Loki is, much more complex than that. Loki has personal motivations. He's jealous. He's going for an identity crisis. So yeah, get rid of Steppenwolf, get rid of Aquaman, take out some of Flash's quips, and it would be, I think, a better film. It still wouldn't be a great film because there's just long stretches that are kind of dull. But it would be like, it's not as bad as it could have been. It's not as bad as I thought it was going to be, given everything else that happened in the DC universe. One thing I want to say is, because this line is in the trailer as well. So Jeremy Irons is like, "Oh, I miss when all we had to deal with was wind up exploding penguins." I really, really want to know what form the Penguin took in the DC expanded universe. What did the Penguin do? How was he defeated? What was his plan? How did he fit into the Gotham atmosphere as a whole as we've seen it? Because the Penguin is a very sort of specific Batman villain that can fit in a specific niche. Like, he's not in the Nolan films for a reason. So I can only imagine that in the DCEU film featuring the Penguin sort of charges at Batman with an umbrella, and Batman just stabs him in the gut and lets him bleed to death. He's like, I've got wind up exploding penguins, and then Ben Affleck Batman's like, I've got a fucking shuriken. You're dead. So yes, yeah. Justice League is not terrible. It's not great. It's just there. Does it make me hopeful for future DC films? Not really. I think future DC films won't have as much effort put into them, to be honest. So, oh well. Yeah. Bye.